Okay, hopefully by now you have heard at least a few times what our mission statement is, that we are called to experience and extend the life-changing love of Jesus in our homes, in our workplaces, and our communities. To this point, we've been focusing on what we mean when we're talking about experiencing the life-changing love of Jesus. We've thought about how the gospel is about knowing the love of Christ. We've thought about worship. We've talked about community. Well, now I want to transition us to thinking about that second word that's an important part of our mission statement, about what it means to extend the life-changing love of Jesus. And to think about this idea, I want for a moment to talk about the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Now, if you're familiar at all with Bible geography, and of course it's fine if you're not, then you'll know that the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea are all part of one water system, that the Sea of Galilee is the north part of it, and then it goes down the Jordan River and it goes to the Dead Sea at the south part of it, and this is in Israel. And the thing that's interesting is the Sea of Galilee is just filled with life. A lot of the fishing stories that you have in the New Testament is taking place in the Sea of Galilee. There's just fertile land all around it. It's beautiful. But when you go to the Dead Sea, it's, well, exactly like it sounds like. It is dead. There is so much salt in the water that not a single creature is able to live in it. And really, any of the shoreline that touches the Dead Sea, there is no life. It is just filled with death. It's the same water. But the difference is with the Sea of Galilee, that water not only has come in from the different mountain rivers, but it has an outlet. Whereas the Dead Sea, the water just comes and it stays there and it gets stagnant. And I want to suggest that there's something about that that is analogous to the Christian life. If we're only about receiving, about experiencing, then our lives become stagnant. It is not life. That part of what it means to be a follower of Christ is not just to be one who's being changed, but to also be giving ourselves outwardly in mission to extend, to show the world around us the life-changing love of Jesus. I mean, probably you're familiar with some of the passages in the New Testament that points us to that calling. Jesus, right before he ascends, calls people to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing and teaching. That's an extending of the life-changing love of Jesus. Paul in Galatians says, "Let us not grow weary of doing good. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially those who are of the household of faith." And what we're hearing there and in a number of other places is that even as we have been loved by Jesus, even as it changes us, what that needs to mean is that it then moves us outward in love towards others. You cannot be a mature Christian unless you're not only experiencing, but extending. It is what it means for us to be alive, and it's also what we are called to. And so as a church, we are constantly thinking through, how do we do that? What does it look like for us to be the way that the love of Jesus is experienced by the world around us? And so you might notice in that mission statement, we focus on three areas. Those are the only areas that are important, but they're the three areas we want to focus on. And that is our homes and our workplaces and our communities. Now, when we're talking about homes, there are a number of ways that we could speak of this. Clearly, our marriage relationship is something that's important to us. But we are especially thinking through is how do we extend the life-changing love of Jesus to our children? If you've been with our church for any length of time, you probably know we have a lot of little kids, which is awesome. And hopefully you've also sensed that these kids are important to us. We as a church want to take our children seriously as people who themselves need the life-changing love of Jesus, people who themselves are called to be disciples, people who are made in the image of God. If you've been to our church in a time that we're baptizing any of our children, you'll know that as a congregation, we make a promise to partner with the parents in helping these kids to experience the life-changing love of Jesus. And it's a promise that we take seriously. You know, one of the key ways that we try to be intentional about partnering with parents is by trying to include these children into the life of our congregation from a very young age. You might know that in some churches, it's not an uncommon thing for kids almost all the way through high school to be in a kind of a separate wing of the church, having their own kind of congregational life. Well, we don't want to do that because we want children to be as much a part of this church as everyone else is. So For the first 3 years of the life of our kids, they're in a nursery where we seek to, we have an army of volunteers trying to make sure that they know that they're loved, they're welcomed, that they belong. But somewhere a little after they turn 3, we encourage parents to have the children join with them in the service for the first part of it, so that they can start learning what it means to be part of a worshiping congregation as they're praising, as they're praying. And then at a certain point, about halfway through the service, they go to what we call children's church, where they are being taught and equipped what it means to be an active participant in the life of our church, what it means to pray, how do we listen to God's word, how do we sing. And our goal for that is a couple. One of them is just, as I said, to help equip them so that at a fairly young age, they're able to participate in the entire church service and be part of our church. But we also desire to foster relationships. Through children's church, they get to know a number of different adults. They get to know some older kids who are helping out. They feel like they belong. And so even during the time when everyone's having snacks, they know their uncles and aunts who aren't their literal uncles and aunts, but are part of this church. Because our desire is to treat them as a part of this church and to be proactive in their discipleship. So not only children's church, but then as they get older, Sunday school, and then with youth group, the goal is not primarily to entertain. Yes, we want to do things in age-appropriate ways, but the goal is to help them to grow as disciples. What does it look like for us to extend the life-changing love of Jesus in partnership with parents for the children? Because they are a precious part of our church, just as much a part of our church as everyone else. And they're the future leaders of our church as well. So we speak about our homes, but we also speak about extending the life-changing love of Jesus in our workplaces. This focus has been involving a certain degree of repentance. Because I think one of the mistakes that the church has made over the last many decades is equating serving Jesus with what we call spiritual things. And I don't even know exactly what spiritual things are. But we associate it with doing stuff that's in the church building or that's explicitly churchy. When really, for many of us, the primary way that we show the love of Christ, in terms of at least the number of hours that we're spending, is through the way that we offer ourselves in our work. If you are a doctor, if you are a teacher, if you're a plumber, if you're a lawyer, you are providing an important service to this world. You are contributing something important. And this is one of the primary avenues that God has given you to glorify himself, to show Christ in the way that you work. Every time we are serving someone, whether it's with a spreadsheet or whether with surgery or whether with fixing, we are loving and we are showing Christ to them. And so one of our goals as a church is to equip all of us who are involved in different occupations, to equip us with a vision for how we can honor Christ in our work and to pray and to send us out. So we seek to extend the life-changing love of Jesus in our homes and in our workplaces, and then finally in our communities. And really, communities is kind of a broad category. There are a number of ways that we do this. Some of them you'll hear a little bit about when Ted speaks about mission for our congregation. We've put a lot of investment and energy into caring for people in Haiti and trying to extend the life-changing love of Jesus there. In the last 6 years or so, we have invested a lot of time and energy in beginning a new congregation in Palos Heights, about a half hour south, and seeking to empower people who are in that area to show the life-changing love of Jesus to their community as this new congregation. But closer to home, when we're talking about extending the life-changing love in our community, one of the primary ways we do that is through community groups. Our desire, our goal is for each of our community groups to have their own personal sense of mission, to have their own way of serving their communities. And so in some ways, each community group has as its goal a service project or some way of adopting some focus of service to their communities each year. Some examples, we have one community group that has been working with By the Hand Ministries, which is an after-school tutoring ministry in the city. And they hosted a party for a number of the kids in one of the schools as a way of just kind of extending the love of Christ. We have another community group that has partnered with World Relief in making efforts to help in the resettlement of refugees. Yet another group has been involved in our ministry to the Bridge, which you'll hear about more in the inner city, which is seeking to show the love of Christ to those who are recently coming out of prison. The possibilities are endless, But it has to begin somewhere. And so that's where one of the ways we seek to do, to have each group in some tangible way working together to show the love of Christ to our communities. There are so many more ways that we can extend the love of Christ to our world around us. And I get excited whenever new people join our congregation, because many of them are people who God has gifted with passions and desires. And my desire is for you, if you are becoming a part of our congregation, to help us in new ways to know what it means to extend the life-changing love of Jesus to the world around us.